Linda, are you talking?
Yeah.
Okay.
I was going to try and call Kathy and Jory. So why don't you guys talk amongst yourselves and I'll call them and then we'll go, okay?
That's good. I've been trying to figure this out and I've been drawing pictures. Like math problems, word problems, I had to draw pictures.
So put it a little closer. I want to see what you ended up
Can you
with.
share that? Yeah, just share it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, that's really great.
And is that called mind mapping? Is that what that is?
Called the visual learner.
Okay, well, that was it. I kind of did a little thing of just writing some stuff because I was trying to figure out the pictures about this big, and we're working with some pieces of it. Other people, as I was looking at other states who were working with other pieces, so it's just kind of interesting to see. Some are just saying the little piece of net neutrality, and then others are just saying mis and disinformation, and trying to figure out how we could encourage other people to maybe join us.
I know. Okay, bye-bye. Okay, Kathy's coming. She had the wrong time.
Oh, well, we did specifically change the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I said that, but that's okay.
I'll be
And then
right back.
I'll Joy. Okay, there's Kathy.
Well, she got her name in the paper for that, with that story about Jane
Huh?
DeDecker. Was in today's paper, I
Yeah.
think, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, that was nice to see.
What
Well,
was it? What paper was it in?
It was in the Reporter Herald.
Oh, we're online now. There was a delay.
And I don't get that. So what was the story about?
It was for, we're doing a fundraiser on the 24th of August, I think it is, at a winery, and she's going to be honored as a
No problem. See you later.
honored suffragette.
That was actually, because I'm the one who put her in on that. That was actually a state fundraiser for
Okay.
Mother's Day. And when I learned about it, I was like, oh, this is absolutely perfect. This is Jane. This is Jane.
It
So I
didn't look like
nominated.
her, though.
Pardon?
I haven't seen her smile like that or laugh like that.
So yeah, I immediately let them know that I was gonna, do what I needed to do, and that she needed to get that award. So
Oh, yes.
I apologize. I was sitting here reading the Washington study report. all was good. So
That's okay. That's okay. So is Jory. And I don't know, I think Melissa David signed up, but I hope she didn't try and decide we were flaky and leave, so I don't know. Anyway, okay, well, I think let's go around and introduce each other because I don't know if everybody knows Celeste. She came in late last meeting and wasn't able to introduce herself because I don't stop. So, okay, so I'm Linda Hutchinson. I live in Larimer County, Loveland specifically. Kathy Marr.
Kathy Marr. I live in Loveland, West Loveland. It's unincorporated Larimer County. And I'll pass the baton to Sonia.
I'm Sonia Ketting and I live in South Fort Collins. And I've been working on this news access and literacy for a couple years now, I think. And Kay.
I'm Kay Shaw and I live in Denver. And I just heard about the group and was real interested. It was a topic that I was interested in and I've learned so much from all of you. Thank you. And the next person, Jory.
I'm Jory Kramer. I live in South Fort Collins as well, about a mile from Sonia, actually. Now you all know that. And I too have been involved in news access and literacy for a couple of years. We kind of came out of the PR team, and so here we all are. Oh, and Kathy, have you gone or?
No, not yet.
Okay, you're next on my screen, so.
Okay. Hi, I'm Kathy Wilson. I live in the northwest corner of Loveland. And I've been interested in this topic for many years, having taught teachers how to do some of the stuff. But I really am excited about what we're doing with the News Access and Literacy Group. So I just saw Celeste grab my attention popping on, so let's go to you.
Hi, I'm Celeste, and I don't really have time for another committee, but I am interested in the topic. I might not be a very good committee member, but I will listen and hopefully provide useful input if I have any to share. And I just thought about something. I'm with the League of Women Voters of Boulder County, and our annual meeting was a couple weeks ago. And we had somebody who teaches or taught, I think, history and civics and things like that. And he gave a great presentation. And I'm going to find the link and put it in the chat.
Oh.
And a lot of it was about kids understanding he talked about the difference between fact and truth. And anyway, I will put that in the chat, and you can see my screen doesn't like me being on, so I'm going to go blank here.
Okay, Dixie.
I'm Dixie Schwartz. I also live in Loveland, and I've also been part of this group for a pretty long time. So I'm passing it to Diana.
Oh, boy. I live in Loveland too, near downtown Loveland, but I came from southwestern Colorado. So I have kind of a rural background with a degree in journalism from CSU. So I've been a boots on the ground, and I've been involved in the Citizen Observer Project too.
Okay,
And what about Beth?
Beth, your turn.
Hi, I'm Beth Hendricks. I'm a peripheral part of this and all committees. I really apologize for the technological difficulties.
That's okay.
Giving me
Really.
gray hairs.
Okay, yes. Well, I'm sorry.
Mhm.
I have a lot. You look like this.
I can tell you someone to get rid of it, but anyway.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I'm going to take you up on that, Kay. Yeah.
Okay, so Jane Hamburger and Sharon Muller were not, they wanted to be here, but they couldn't. And that's the only others I have heard from today. So let's start. Did you all get the agenda? It was in that email. Oh, wait a minute. Okay. And there, can you see it?
Yep.
Okay, all right, so the first item is, has anybody, Sonia, Kathy, and I were supposed to contact different people. I contacted Washington, Kathy contacted League of Women Voters US, and Sonia contacted Anna Brugman. And I haven't heard from anybody. Well, I did hear back. They said, we're happy our materials were helpful to you, and we will discuss your suggestions and get back to you. And my suggestions were exactly what we want to do, to take this as a national concurrence rather than a state concurrence. And if they would support that, and I left it the question pretty open-ended. So if they want to support it, but they don't want to lead it, or they want to lead it and they want us to follow, however they want to do it, I left it pretty much like that. And then the second thing I asked them is if we could post their position in our Google group, a link to the position or the whole position, because I think people in that Google group would be interested in seeing that, some of them. That's all I know. Sonia and Kathy?
I contacted Brady Horan, I think his last name is, or how you say it. Anyway, I tried to contact him because we've had some connection with him on other matters at the National League, but I didn't hear back from him, and I got a vacation response, and but the date on it was really kind of bizarre. So if I don't hear back from him tomorrow, and I was just asking for a connection, so a person who might be a liaison for us and answer questions. If I don't hear back from him tomorrow, then I'll try to get a hold of Jennifer. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Who's Jennifer?
Or Jessica?
Yeah, thank you. Name retrieval. Yeah.
Yeah, I think Jessica is who you should be talking to, Kathy.
Okay, thanks.
But that's sort of a guess.
Well, like I said, maybe after we get off of this, I'll just send her an email.
Great. Okay.
Is that it, Kath?
Yeah, that's all I have because I didn't hear back. So,
Okay.
And out of ignorance, may I ask who Jessica is?
oh, what's her title? I'd have to get. I don't know.
Director of Advocacy and Public Policy or something like
Yeah,
that.
something
Jessica,
like that. Yeah,
Jessica Jones Caparel.
right.
Yeah, she's the same person who helped us with the, what was that thing called? The resolution. Remember,
Right.
Sonia, when we
Oh.
had that one meeting?
Okay.
But that's all I know.
Yeah.
And then Sonia, do you
I've reached to Anna Bugman and have not heard back from her, and I might have to reach out and see if she's still with the organization. She could have taken another job, so I might have to move up to, what's the name of the gentleman that she was the right-hand person for?
Waldman. His last name was Waldman. Mike? Is it Mike Waldman? I have the emails in, I can look them up because I have them in my email list somewhere.
Okay, I'll poke around while we're talking, see if he might come up in my search.
Yeah,
Getting
Sonia.
Kurt Waldman, is that right?
Yes.
no, it's Steve.
No.
It's Steve.
Steve, thank you. And Anna's picture used to come up when you looked at the about or something like that on their website. So that would be one way of knowing. And people were away for this long weekend, so that's why I was waiting.
Yeah, so I might I'll reach to Steve too, so that we can get
Yeah.
some information on the states that they're working with.
Okay. Okay, so the next thing was, what's the next thing on this thing? Those attachments I made. And, let's see. Wait a minute. Talk about technologically challenged. Anyway, okay. Can you see that? It's kind of small though, isn't it?
Yeah.
Can you see it?
Mhm.
Okay,
Yes.
so somebody asked for definitions, and so I pulled out all the resources I could find, and Kathy Wilson made this beautiful spreadsheet that I could never have made, but she made it, and it was so helpful because I just pulled all these things from this spreadsheet. And so I came up with this, and it's just, this is just my way of explaining how, with backup support from these documents, how concurrence or study consensus and concurrence work. Because some people have never, I've been involved in a study, and I know Sonia and Dixie have, but I don't know how many other people have been. So we can go through these really quickly if you want. Do you want?
Sure.
Okay, so This statement that's underlined, this one right here, guidelines can vary from issue to issue. That's directly from the US guidelines. So I think they're telling you to be flexible, you know, with these things, although we have to check, but. So the first thing is that a league member will identify an issue in need of a position. And then the second is that league members agree to conduct a study of that issue, with study being defined as the formal process of objectively investigating and discussing a body of facts, including policy implications, with the goal of developing a statement of position that is usually designed to provide the league with a basis for future political action. During the study phase, members are educated on the issue through readings, webinars provided by the study committee. So then when they conduct this, they're conducting the study and everybody's educated, and then we hold consensus meetings. Consensus is defined as the collective opinion of a substantial number of league members, representative of the membership as a whole, after objective study of an issue. Consensus is not a simple majority or unanimity. It is the overall sense of the group as expressed through the exchange of ideas and opinions, whether in a meeting of the full membership or in smaller meetings. The discussion centers around the consensus questions that have been pre-approved by the appropriate board. The questions are neutral and written so that the answers lead directly to a statement of position. Each question is limited to one topic or idea to ensure that no confusion exists. That's to the intent of the answer. And the consensus forms contain text boxes so that if there's a general comment, they can fill that in and send it to the people who read the results. And then the study committee and appropriate league board draft a final position based on the consensus results. The following can occur after a position has been adopted. League members at any level identify a position with which they would like to concur. Concurrence being defined as a substantial number of members agreeing with a position reached by another league, study committee, task force, or league board. Concurrence can be used so that other leagues can benefit from one state or local league's position by adopting that position. It can also be used to update a position. I think the healthcare position was updated at least twice, I know, by the concurrence process. And after I read everything, now this is just my note. It's not this is not gospel truth, but this is my note. I don't think from everything I read that we need to conduct a formal study because Washington has done that if we're simply concurring with that position. I'm not sure what happens if you tweak their position. I don't know how that works, but I do know that, looking at what the digital equity people did, remember, and that there was a healthcare thing before the last convention. They sent out a ton of material and had meetings and stuff. So if you wanted to be educated on that before your delegates voted, you had that opportunity. Kathy.
Okay. I just want to get this. This is just driving me crazy. So is consensus something that would be done in a local league or a state league, and a concurrence be something that would be done nationally or between states?
Not necessarily, because like the immigration study, we did a national immigration study and that was a consensus. But I think it's my impression that the National League really doesn't want to get involved in big studies, and so they like these concurrences with, okay, Celeste.
So I know a little bit about concurrences. I worked on, against, for the national voter representation / electoral systems consensus, concurrence. But it was weird because, okay, let's back up a little bit. In 2017, the Boulder County League came up with a voting methods position. Then later that year, the state concurred with the Boulder County position, but added a little bit of definition at the end, wanting to define tactical and honest. Then in 2020, a couple of league members, one from Oregon, one from California, wanted a national position on voting methods. They called it voter representation / electoral systems. And they looked at all the different positions that different states had, and they picked what they wanted from each state. And they said, this is what we want to concur, we want as the national position. And they got California to adopt it -3 bullet points. And then we complained about one of the bullet points, and so they took that out. And then that position without those 4 bullet points was finally concurred with at national convention. So there can be things changing along the way. I think it helps to have, for instance, we could look at lots of different positions around in other states, write up, pick and choose what we want, and then have the state say, yes, we want this, and then ask national to concur with it.
Okay. All right, so
Complicated process.
So
yeah.
how does Washington then come, if we do that, how does the Washington position or what they have to say come into this? This is so confusing to me.
Well, one thing they could do is they could say, oh yeah, we like what you did, and we will ask our membership to concur with this better updated version.
Okay.
And that's, the more people you can get on the final version you want adopted, the better. When they asked Colorado to go with their voter representation one, we said, nope, we can't handle the majority criterion bullet, so take that out, and then we'll come on board.
And so then we still would not need to do a study, because as I'm reading through the document that Washington has, like so far, I would say at least half of it, if not a little bit more, are examples from Washington State.
Mhm.
Correct. We would not have to do a study.
Great. Okay. Thanks.
Okay, Dixie, did you have something to say?
Sorry, I got distracted by a phone call. So I'm not sure what happened in the last 30 seconds, but I was thinking based on some of the things I read, you don't necessarily have to get a bunch of states to concur before you go to national. It is possible somewhere. I think I was reading this, that you could just go straight to national. What you want is some states that are going to back you at national, but they don't have to have actually voted to concur before you get to national, I think. But I don't have any. That's also not a 100% that I absolutely know that to be true, which is why I feel like we need someone at national who can really guide us.
Yeah, and I think Linda Mahan, she really emphasized that the more states you can get to follow this, the better off you're. And she emphasized big states, like she said, Washington and California and New York, those states. But let me read the very bottom of my document, and then I'll get rid of this document. It says that the simplest distinction, this was from Connecticut's guidelines. The simplest distinction between concurrence and consensus is that consensus involves a discussion of questions and then a vote on the individual questions, and these votes will lead to a position. but concurrence is just an up or down vote on a statement or a position as a whole. So,
But I want to say, even if you want to do a concurrence, you're still going to want to have a caucus at the national convention before the vote. Because
Oh,
people will
yeah.
ask questions. If they don't have the right to ask questions, they're going to vote it down.
right, they have to,
That's true.
you have to advocate for your position. You have to educate and hand out materials. I mean, if somebody came up to me and asked me to vote out of clear blue because it's just a good idea, I wouldn't do it,
Mhm.
you know, so. Okay. So is everybody clear on the definitions, or did I totally confuse the issue?
The discussion has helped a
Yeah.
lot for me because what was written was still not very clear.
I remember back when GMOs were a question for League because they were on the ballot and League wondered, could we take a position? And it seemed to me that consensus is something that comes after a study. You do a study and then the consensus, so it's top down. So this is national deciding on these questions that percolated up, and then they have all the leagues answer the same questions. And then that's how we get our consensus. Or in the case of GMOs, we didn't have a consensus, so we could not advocate either direction for GMOs.
Yeah, and you could, but you can do that at any level. Any level of league can have a study, and that board decides what the questions with consulting with the study committee. But that can happen at any level, because it seems to me that behavioral health, that was a state study, and then that's the one that the healthcare team took to national for concurrence, and they added that to the healthcare position.
So it's first a state study with a consensus that then went to a national concurrence and skipped over.
Right. But you can do it. I mean, any league can initiate a study, you know, within reason.
Uh-huh.
So, okay, Dixie.
Is that the one, somewhere I read in all that stuff, it said a concurrence from the floor at national. Did anybody else pick that up? I don't know, I should have printed it out and highlighted it because I don't remember, but it mentioned, it was just like one little tiny line in the middle of a bunch of stuff that said there was a national concurrence from the floor, which to me, that's why I was saying before, I didn't think every state had to concur. They just had to know enough to be able to feel comfortable voting for it when they got there. But that's what I was kind of assuming meant then that you didn't have to do, I mean, you want to have, I think Celeste, or whoever said that was right. You've got to have your meetings at national to talk about it, but not have to do a ton of official agreement before you get there, I think.
Well, I just think if you had, I mean, it just makes sense to me that the more backing you have and the more support from other leagues, the more successful you're going to be.
Well, I agree with that. It's just that if they have to wait till their annual meeting, we might, I mean, we can go for that, but you know, if it's like, oh, we're not going to do this until we have half the states that agree, I don't know if we'll ever get there if we wait for that.
Well, yeah, I don't think we have to do that either, but I think, okay, Celeste, you say, do you have a comment?
I just want to remind people that Colorado was quite disappointed at the 2022 National Convention because we really wanted our election security position to get concurrence, and we did not succeed. And we might want to talk to Karen Sheik and Maud Nerol and Gaithia and a few other people to find out if they have any advice for getting concurrence at national.
Yeah, Maud is in the mix, you know, of who we're talking about or talking to already. So,
Yeah, Maud and Linda Mahan mainly.
But Karen we should maybe bring Karen into this as well.
Okay, so are we ready to move on?
Well, what's Washington going to do? Are they kind of taking the lead on this, or they just put the study out and just let it kind of?
I don't know. I contacted them and I have not heard back. The first time I contacted them, it was about us doing our own study, and they were fully supportive of that and gave us permission to use all their materials and to contact them when we wanted to write our consensus questions. And then we went to the caucus, and Linda Mahan and Christina Manthe said, don't do that, just go for a national concurrence. So I went back to Washington and told them that's what we would like to do, and asked them if they would support that. And I haven't heard back, but it was a long holiday weekend, so that doesn't freak me out too much. I'm sure they have to talk about it, see if they want to, Kathy.
Yeah, so I was just gonna comment that I thought that one attachment you distributed on the digital equity concurrence was really good. I mean, that gave a pretty good roadmap, and I think it emphasizes just what you were saying, Linda, that it's helpful to have all these other states on board before you go for the concurrence
Right.
vote. So I thought that was a nice roadmap to kind of follow.
Yeah. And I don't think you have to, you don't have to expect these people to adopt a position. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that you have to network with them and say, here, talk to them and say this, here, look at this beautiful position. It will do everything we want it to do. Well, and then you just get them to agree to be part of the concurrence with you. Because that's what the digital equity people did. It was Connecticut's position. They had New Mexico, Georgia, Tennessee, and New York. And that, as far as I remember at the convention, it's pretty much sailed through. So
What was the roadblock with the election security position? Why was that not concurred?
I don't remember. I remember it wasn't recommended by the National League. They
Yes.
had a problem with something about the ballot. I can't remember what it was. And then,
Oh, sorry.
and so they didn't recommend it, but I can't remember that they recommended the digital equity. I don't remember.
I don't think they did. And I think that one of the problems they had with the election security was the name of it. And I don't know if that was enough to tank it, but they didn't like election security because they felt like that was saying that our elections aren't secure and they wanted it. But I don't know if that was enough to tank it. But I do remember that was one of the arguments they had.
Yeah, and one passed and one didn't. That wasn't backed by US to begin with, before they got there, if I remember correctly. The other thing that I wanted to say that was, I remember with the healthcare position, that wasn't it New York State that was putting that one forth.
Mhm.
They had at least one or two Zoom meetings that they invited people from, members from states, from all sorts of states, to come and just listen to what they had to say. And that to me is a really good move, because you're letting people know what you're going after ahead of time before you ever get to convention.
Yeah, and I think the digital equity did, and I think didn't Colorado do that with the election security? I thought they had meetings too that they offered to everybody to go, but maybe I'm.
Well, they had a ton of meetings. I remember a lot of meetings, but I can't remember if most of them were in Colorado, or if they stepped out. We'd have to ask Maud about that. I don't remember anymore.
Yeah. Okay, so are we good on the definitions, you guys? As good as it can get till we find somebody at National to help us?
Mhm.
Okay. So, okay, wait a minute. I have to share my screen. I always forget. Minor details. Okay, now can you see this concurrence timeline?
Yes.
All right. So this is just, this isn't through very many steps, but the first one is what we've been talking about, if Washington will support the concurrence process with their local news. So I've contacted them. Then Kathy has contacted LWV US to confirm that we are on the correct path and we don't have to conduct a study. And that confirm that we'll have a mentor or a contact at National for questions. So we don't get to the end of this process and they go, oh, you didn't do it right. So we can't listen to you. So once we get past that, then I think our next step we need to take is to Maud suggested, and I think Linda Mahan did too, to write paragraphs to submit to the board that would explain why we want this concurrence. So I was thinking that we would need a brief introduction that saying that stress that we have been studying this for a long time. It's been over 2 years we've been studying and reading. And that the reason the loss of local news is important is because it impacts legal values and democracy by affecting citizen participation, government transparency and efficiency, news literacy, civil discourse, and JEDI, and whatever else you want to, if we have some other things. But that's my elevator speech, so I know it by heart. And then
What's the JEDI?
Justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion. And then this is from, the rest of this is a list that's on the state website, their policy 202, developing positions for action and advocacy. And these are questions they will want to have answered. So do we already have positions that address the problem of how the loss of credible and ethical local news reporting impacts democracy? I think, I'm not on legislative action, but it seems to me that everything we have is based on, right now, is citizens' right to know. That's what we use,
That's
right?
it. You are
Yeah.
right. You are correct. There has been nothing else added to that. So,
Right. And I think citizens' right to know was originally used, intended for Observer Corps and transparency in government, but it doesn't say anything about ethical or credible news reporting or mis and disinformation.
mhm.
So,
Yeah.
Does anybody have any comments? I think that'll pull you up to the top but if I'm not paying attention to somebody, just interrupt me. And then, are there immediate advocacy needs in the field of local news loss and local and news literacy? And I think, particularly given the fact that the Supreme Court kind of passed the buck on Section 230, I think there will be more legislation coming up just because that one piece of legislation, they reintroduced it over and over and over. So I think we could use, and then Jory, didn't you, in part of your presentation, didn't you have a table listing all the pieces of legislation in the different states and stuff?
Yeah, I believe that's from, I don't think it's Penny Abernathy's, but one of the universities has that and they update it and they keep it. So I can go back and look for that. Because
Okay.
it's dynamic. That's what I'm trying to say. It's constantly being updated.
Okay,
And
and
at both on the state level and then also on the federal level.
so we have, I would say that there are immediate needs.
Yeah.
And then is the Washington position sufficiently general to address the problems in 3A? So what do you guys think of that position?
Say that one
Let me
again.
say that I like it.
Say that one again.
Okay, is the Washington position on local news sufficiently general enough that we could address all the issues that we have found during our past 2.5 years of study? Do you think we could, can you apply that to anything you could, can you use that as an argument if you're advocating for support for local news?
I think it's really good. I mean, you know, being
I-
somebody who has to use positions all the time, you know, with the Legislative Action Committee, that what they have in their positions would be just really helpful if we have legislation coming up again. So,
Mhm. Yeah, because I think do you need me to pull the position up again? Or are you okay with? Because I think that if I can find it here. Okay, here it is. So that the general, there's the general statement. Can you all see it?
Mhm.
Okay. And then credible and ethical local journalism in whatever format it is published. So they're saying news that's in a newspaper, news that's on social media, you know, everything. We just want everybody to have news.
Yeah.
But it's got to be credible and ethical news. It can't be pink slime, or, you know, talk radio, or what, how can I put this, cable news. So, and then the reason we want this is so people can cast an informed ballot. The support could take a variety of forms. So I remember those were were they tax? They weren't tax credits.
yes, they
Yes,
were.
they were tax credits.
Yeah, it was the businesses that would have the tax credits.
Right, okay. And this one, I think this one is terribly important to me. If they didn't have this, I wouldn't think it would be complete, but I think we have to have something that emphasizes how important news literacy is, because even if you just have to, we have such a problem. I'm beginning to think that the misinformation and disinformation is just as important as the loss of the news access. So, and then we talked about, in our studies, we always talked about the barriers that people who don't have money to read the news, or people who live in rural areas, or don't have access to libraries, all that affects. So, I mean, I think it's a pretty complete position, but what do you guys think?
Well, I think I had commented that I think I heard somewhere where 1 in 5 people in Colorado now are Spanish speakers. And I think language is pretty important. And being an old person, I think age issues are too, if you use, because of the lingo. Anymore, there are a lot of positions that, terms that need to be defined. But I think primarily I would like to see language be one of the barriers more and more. Now, you can say and cover everything else and not limited to, but I think more and more we're going to have language barriers, whether it's Colorado or Texas.
Is that covered at all in here? I remember these are broad. and
Well, the
so-
line 5, I guess
Let's
that's
see.
letter LN5 mentions these barriers.
Well, it says they include but are not limited to. so
Right.
Mhm.
Right, and have access to comprehensive. So everybody should have access to comprehensive. I could use that. I could use 5. If somebody, put up a bill in the state legislature that said you had to have a Spanish translation to your news outlet. And this would cover it because it's nice and broad that way.
Mhm. Yeah. So.
I see what you're saying, Kathy, but I kind of think Diana might be right that it's important to identify languages and specifically name it, because there's ways to dodge that.
Mm.
You're giving access. I think it's easy to escape the question of language when you're talking about access. So it would be a helpful reminder, I think, if it were in there, to make it clear that, that's important too. The language that you're communicating in is going to be important access issue.
I think that's an easy addition to it that nobody would complain about, because it's saying barriers include but are not limited to, and they have 3 of them. So adding language is no big deal, especially in our society when we have so many different languages, that are spoken. So that reminder, I think everybody would go along with it without a problem, is what I'm saying.
My other comment was about the journalism students. Who wants to be a journalism student these days? The money is not there.
Say the same thing about
Yeah,
teachers.
Well,
Do you have
that's
an
it.
idea where that
It's
might
like,
fit
who
in,
wants to?
Diana?
Huh?
Do you have an idea where that might fit in? Does it fit into any of these?
Well, I was about
There-
to-
It's in there.
yeah, Ellen
It is in
Ford,
there on number 4.
Journalism students.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe there should be something about recruiting and making it. It's kind of like being teachers. It's a thankless job and the hours are terrible. Listen, the teachers always got paid better than I did, and I worked long hours too. So maybe recruiting or and maybe encouraging support a little bit more. Yeah, you can have all of your high ideals, but if you have nobody to go out, I guess we could do AI, right?
Oh, gosh, no.
No,
Listen to that
No.
Nobel, the Nobel Summit that was on last week.
Oh, yes,
my
I
gosh.
wish. Yes.
and all that mentioned though, when we look at that local news position brief in that LN4,
Mhm.
Mhm. So Dixie, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I mean, I think these things are all good, but if we wordsmith it too much, first of all, the main question is what Kathy said. Can you use it
Yes.
to advocate for what we want? And I think it comes back almost to our original thing, because when you read that thing at the bottom, it said you vote up or down, yes or no. And we're not gonna let people in the end, I don't know, can we say add language? I mean, it's covered here, so we wouldn't have to add it. If we just do an up or down, yes or no, life might be way easier than to try and wordsmith it now. But I think
Yeah.
that's back to what we have to do to make this get through. As long as we can advocate based on what's here, we might say, okay, if we're allowed to add things, we could add language. That would be fine. But if we're not, can we still advocate on that? And Kathy's saying yes.
Yes, I agree. That's true. Yep.
We can be so wishy-washy that nobody will care. I think kind of looking at it actually says we did read the language and we understand what's going on. And I like the positivity of, well, I think language isn't, I liked what Kathy said about it. It emphasizes language, but recruiting, not just encouraging or supporting. We need to recruit these young people to go in and be those ethical and credible journalists, and I don't think they're gonna want to.
But that's different than how we use positions. Okay.
Mhm.
Oh,
Because
yeah.
we use positions to advocate, especially legislation that's going through. And so we have to write a rationale of why we support or oppose, and it has to be based on this. So that's why they're not wishy-washy, but they are applicable, more applicable. We don't want to narrow that applicableness. What word am I trying for?
Applicability.
Yeah, we don't
Applicability.
want to, we don't want to limit that at all. Because that's important.
So, yeah, so for instance, Diane, if some legislator came up with a bill that was proposing, among other things, offering financial aid for journalism students or stipends or something like that,
I
you
think
could
that would
use
be-
this
yeah.
position, number 4 of the position, as Kathy said, to support that and advocate that for that bill to go through, because that's enough. It's saying that's support for journalism students. So any bill that came up like that, we'd have a position ready to go to say, yeah, the league supports a bill that would do that for journalism students. So it works as is.
Okay. So after discussing this, though, if we have a meeting with Washington, I want to make sure that we're all on the same page. So do we like this position?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, everybody's good? Okay. So are we done discussing the position?
Well, like in a business meeting, somebody makes a motion and then somebody seconds, and of course, they already discussed it to begin with, which is which is against Robert's Rules of Order. But then again, somebody says, well, why don't we do this? And then it's an amendment, and then you have to ask the person who made you have to vote on the amendment, or you have to vote, on the amendment, and then the motion and all that sort of rigmarole. So, we could always ask Washington, what do you think? If they answer us. And if they take the leadership, we may end up having to take the leadership. Are you ready for this, Linda?
Yep.
I like it, and I could, the difference between support and encourage it could be a suggestion, but not a big difference. I have a
Yeah.
sticking point with the word credible, though. I still have, it's like, well, credible to who? Because we're in such, partisan vitriol that that I don't know, that still feels very non-specific to me. Like, credible news needs to be defined or changed to a more specific adjective.
Okay, so
Doesn't that come within the
well,
backup stuff that you develop with it? Isn't that correct? Where those things become clear through the things that you then put together to show each of those? I mean, isn't each of these taken, the 1 through 5, and then blown out in some way? And that would be where that, then it helped people understand a little better, or am I wrong?
Well, maybe Kathy knows because she was reading it, right?
Which
Were you reading the more detailed version?
I'm in the midst. I'm a very
75 pages?
no, it's 125.
Oh,
Yeah.
125, okay.
Yeah, so I'm in the middle of it. What I've been doing too, which won't answer your question, but what I'm doing is making a document of usable quotes from that document that we could incorporate. Because that would help me to write something if I had to write something. So that's where I'm at. And believe me, I'm just trying to work through this in my own mind as to how the whole process works. So
yeah, and I think I think we had the discussion about credible and ethical the last time around, and I went back and looked at that report. And if you look at the credentials of the women who wrote this report, they are league members and they are all journalists. So I'm assuming that they had good reasons for the words they used in this report.
That would be something to ask, why they picked,
Yeah.
why they picked credible as opposed to something else.
Because,
Um,
I mean, we could assume they have good reason, but I don't know why we should have to assume because they,
Right.
you know, they're fallible too. People check my work. I'm like, oh yeah, well, that is better. Gee, we didn't think of it. And like a word like verifiable
Yes,
would resonate better with me.
I
Yeah.
think, and they make a big point in that report. That's I think where I stopped reading this weekend, but there's a big thing about journalism goes through a verification process.
Mhm.
And so it's verified.
right.
Kathy, Mar, did you have something to say?
Yeah, so I wanted to go back to our last meeting. There were two things I thought we all agreed on that we thought were important to change. And one was the word credible. I think we did agree that, I think most of us at least liked verifiable better. And why don't you want clear language? I mean, people that want to use this position are not going to go back and read the background information on it. They're just going to use the position. So you want the words to be as clear to the uninitiated as possible. And so I think that is a good thing to suggest, to make a word choice there. So there's no bones about what it means. The second thing was, I really do feel strongly about that syntactic problem in the first, I think it was the first position, that we should suggest a change there. And other than that, I think it is in good shape to cover bases, and it offers a lot of mileage position wise, I think.
Okay.
So I have a question.
Mhm.
So I want to say 2 years, maybe 3 years ago, legislation went through about teaching media literacy in schools.
Mhm.
Okay. Would one of those positions be good? Would it apply? I'd have to look at those again to see if, because one of the things they were talking about in the report that I read yesterday or today was that they wanted, somebody was advocating that kids start media literacy education as early as possible, right? And continue it all the way through all of their education. So I didn't look at the positions again to see if we had one, because what I used was the informed citizens, the informed citizenry. That was all we had to support our position with them.
Yeah, and I think, didn't we go to a meeting on the media literacy position that passed, and they said they used something from education for that as a justification for supporting that.
Yeah, I'm sure I cobbled something together for it, for the testimony and everything. But it would be nice if there was something in the Washington position that I could pull up from that, that we could pull up from that one. I don't have the positions open in front of me, so I can't answer my own question.
Okay.
So, I think, so my thought is, we're going through this as us, and we say, okay, we think these two things in particular that Kathy pointed out would be better. So I would say, if we're now with a group of more people, we're sitting in a room with Washington, could we live with what is here? Or are we going to fight that no matter what between us? I mean, we're just talking that right now, so that when we get in front of them, it's not us having it out with each other in front of other people, especially Washington. So,
Well, I think the syntax argument, I can't live with that.
Yeah.
That needs to be changed. I mean,
okay.
because that.
Okay, well, that's what I think we need to know. So if we need to kind of understand amongst ourselves, what of this can we actually not live with, and what of it would we be willing to live with if we had to get the position through? I mean, that just seems kind of like understanding our own and understanding who we are when we go and talk to somebody else.
So do you
I
think,
can live with it if they can explain it. I mean, I think there's some questions here about why people wonder why they use credible versus verifiable or
Right.
whatever other we threw out there. And I don't think there's anything wrong in asking them to explain. And if they, I just think they probably have a good reason because of their background and what they've worked in. So, but I don't think there's anything wrong with asking.
Right, and it would just be between the two states. It would be between us and Washington. You wouldn't do this in front of a whole group of different, state representatives.
Right. Okay.
Well, I think the differences in our two states between Washington and Colorado, I think we have a little more a diversity, honestly, with the Hispanic population we have. And I don't know, but that's my guess. I don't think that people would really argue much against language. I mean, having to add that to the barriers. What was it? Was it LN5 was the last one?
Mhm.
Well, Washington State has a lot of Asian population.
That's what I was gonna say.
Issue.
And they have their share of Latinos too, because I lived up there, so or Hispanics.
And also a lot of Native Americans, right?
Well, maybe they should be considering that too, and we have our Utes and Navajos and Arapahoes and
That's
cetera.
in their report. It's in their report. They have a section in there that talked about they were quoting from a Latino source and they were quoting from Native Americans. So that's in there.
Mhm.
in the explanation, but it isn't
Yeah.
in the position
Right.
statement.
Okay, so are we in agreement about that? That the syntax thing needs to be fixed, and we will ask questions about the choice of that word.
Mhm.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
verify
language.
instead.
Okay, yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
All right. Okay. So the next thing is, okay, that one document with the timeline. That was what I think should come next. Is the letter to the state league. I guess we could work on that, but we can't send it till we know what Washington thinks.
Right.
So, do you want to work on it, or should we just wait till we find out what Washington thinks?
I'm gonna talk as a board member here.
Okay,
And I'm gonna recuse myself from being part of the writing of it since I'm gonna have to be voting on it. But I don't see any problem with you guys. That was my California coming out with all of you guys working on a draft
okay,
of the letter.
okay. So, okay, the next question I have is, does anybody want to start that draft? Or would you like me to start that draft, or? Okay, I think I volunteered to start the draft. Okay.
Well,
Okay.
you have an outline to begin with.
Right, so I'll start it and then I'll just, I guess I'll post it in a Google Doc. Does that work for everybody? So we can work on it together. Okay, so then the next item is, when do you want to have our next meetings? Do you want to stick with Tuesdays, but Kathy has a task force meeting next Tuesday, right?
It's at 5:30. If we could do, oh my, yes.
Okay.
That's also Kathy. I don't know if Kathy is going to come with me, but I'm going to be down in Denver that morning because I was going to say, well, if we could do it at 4:30, but I can't. I should be back by then.
Oh, and the 19th, is that what we're talking about?
No, I'm talking about the 6th.
The 6th.
Yeah,
Oh,
so,
okay.
yeah, Kathy, I'm not gonna be able to go, so I'm sorry about
Okay,
that.
that's good to know.
Yeah.
Thank you. Little side talk here.
Yeah,
Okay, does anybody want to meet on the 6th at 4:30?
That's also
I
the
can't.
healthcare.
But I don't know.
I'm available.
You're available?
Yeah,
Okay, so Kathy, you think, Wilson, you think you'll be back?
I hope so, yes.
Kathy Mars not going.
Yeah, I will be available.
Okay. Sonia, are you available on the 6th at 4:30?
We're talking in Tuesday at 4:30. Yes, I could do it.
Yeah.
Dixie?
I'm not sure. The next 2 weeks from here are pretty iffy.
Oh,
Since-
is that, you have the baby?
Yeah, yeah,
Oh,
so
yeah.
maybe.
Okay. Celeste won't be here. Well, I feel
Uh-oh.
sorry for you, except for you're going to Paris, so I don't think I can feel too
Oh.
sorry for you. Diana and Kate,
Yeah.
sound good? Okay. All right. I think it's kind of good to keep it on Tuesdays if we can. Do you want to say like the next Tuesday too, or should we wait? The next one would be the 13th. Kathy, you're muted.
5:30? I could do 5:30. I have a meeting at 4:30. So I hate to bounce around like this.
Well, that's okay. I have a meeting, I think our originally scheduled meeting is for June 27th, but I have to get my eyes dilated that day at like 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So you're all gonna look really blurry to me if you want me to be at the meeting. Somebody else will have to run it. I can talk, but I won't be able to see your hands raised or anything.
Would we be better to move back to the 20th? And that would give us 2 weeks between the 6th and the 20th?
Yeah, we can, do you want to try to do that, you guys? That meet on the 6th at 4:30 and then meet on the 20th at, do you want to stick with 4:30 or do you like 5:30?
I would have to do 4:30. I have the state board meeting that evening, so.
Okay.
I like the 20th at 4:30 too.
Yeah.
And not do the 27th.
Right, okay, yeah, unless something comes up.
Yeah.
that we need to meet. Okay, so does that make sense to everybody? The 6th at 4:30 and then the, what is that, 2 weeks away, 20th at 4:30.
4:30.
Sonia, does that work for you? Okay,
Yeah, yes, I'm putting it down, and I also can report that I got an autoresponder, Steve Waldman from Rebuild Local News. He still has an address there, but he's working more intensely for this new project, the groundtruthproject.org, and I'm examining what that is. It looks like they support journalists. Anyhow, so we'll find out more from Steve, and maybe if he's got good information or we want to ask him questions, I could invite him to a meeting, but we'll see what I hear back.
okay.
I think Anna's gone.
Oh, okay,
Bummer.
yeah,
She was
Yeah.
very helpful.
yeah.
Because he's listed all these references of, if you want this, reach here, and her name is none of them. And she used to be his right-hand person, so.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, so we've got a couple meetings set up. I'll start on the proposal that will go to the state board. And we'll work on that together. We're still gonna wait to hear from the US League, and then Sonia's working on her stuff, and Linda, I'm pointing to myself, is still waiting to hear from Washington. And as soon as I find out, and maybe they'll want to have a meeting, I'm hoping. I mean, I asked them to meet before, but I think they were just ready to get out of there because they had just finished their annual meeting and adopted. If you look at their website, they had 2 studies this year and they adopted 2 positions, this one and one on waterways. So, I mean, they've been busy. So are you guys good to go? Do you feel
A
good?
question, can I ask? I had, Linda, while you were talking on the phone to other people, I had said that I was looking at what other states had been doing. Someone said in Washington's, they had a list of state by state what happens. Did someone say that you were talking about it was fluid and then it kept changing as was that about state positions or was that something else? Someone was talking
May
about.
have been in regards to the legislation. I've got links to two tables that are always constantly updated with legislation that pertains to journalism.
Okay, so
I think
that's more to do with what the state is doing itself, not necessarily what a league is doing. Is that right?
Exactly. It has nothing to
maybe-
do with league. It's just the overview of state legislation
Okay.
proposals and
Because
federal.
what I was looking at, if it would help, and if it won't, I'll stop where I am. I was just looking at each league to see either who had a position statement or who was working on something to do with media in any way. And like I said, I found 3 already, and I'm about a third of the way through. And I thought, well, that at least gives us some ideas when we're finished, if that would help us anyway. If it doesn't, just tell me and I won't spend the time with it.
I think it's a great idea.
Hey,
I second that, yeah.
hey, have you checked the League of Women Voters Clearinghouse for positions?
No, I haven't. So tell me where I just look on.
I just sent you the site
Okay.
in chat to everybody.
Okay. Thank you.
So ideally, every state, maybe every local position, local league
Oh,
that
okay.
creates a position puts it on there. And so that's a great first place to check.
Okay, good. Thank you. Okay.
I checked the clearinghouse, but I just did a search for media. And I didn't search for anything. And what kept coming up was the digital equity position. But, that I didn't do a very thorough search either, so.
Government has something called transparent. I'm looking for it right now. Transparent open government. I don't know if that might be useful.
Mhm.
Citizen Initiative for Transparency in state and local governments. That's not the same as what we're talking about. So maybe this is even more important, but people will ask, have you looked in the clearinghouse? So that's a
Okay.
good thing to do.
Yeah, that's the first thing Linda Mahan asked, and I said, no, so I did. But
Can I verify the 2 meetings are the 6th and the 20th, both at 4:30?
that's what we decided, right?
Okay.
Okay.
good.
Okay. All right, are you guys ready to go?
Mhm.
Okay, thank you for coming.
All right.
Thank you.
You.
Bye.
Bye.
See you later.
Yep.